Okay, so now we want to show you just a little bit of what the tools Pantheon service can offer you. So to start, we're just going to go back to our homepage or our dashboard. And here you're going to see a list of all of our sites. We're going to click on, again, our Code Karate store. You'll probably only see one for you. And here we go. So this is the dashboard for the individual site that we're using, or our Code Karate store that we've been working on in the previous videos. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see a bunch of different categories, and inside each category, of course, there's setup features that you can enable and disable and configure. So on the first one here, you'll see code. Code is simply the code of your site. So anything that is contained within the site. So all your module files contain code. All your theme, the way that your site looks, contains code. So anytime that a file in there is changed, you'll get a notification in this section. And then we're actually going to show you one of those changes here. One thing you want to notice on the top, there is 3 different environments. There's a dev, a test, and a live. You're probably most likely not seen this in the past. You're most likely only using a live site. But what's nice with Pantheon is it gives you 3 different versions of your site, so you can test out new features before they go live to your audience. And then you can push them up to different environments to ensure that you won't have any issues on a production or a live site.
So the first thing to note is down here when you're looking at your code is it says there's 385 file changes are ready to commit to the dev environment. So as you're building out your site, you are actually changing and looking at your dev site. But you don't want the people who are purchasing things on your actual store or your online store to use your dev site. You want them to, of course, see the live site. And that provides that clean separation. So the first thing we're going to do is if we click in this box, you're going to see it's going to list files with the most changes. You can also click to see all changed files. And it's going to list all the modules that we've changed, and it will go ahead and show any changes that we've made to the actual code. One important thing to keep in mind is there is a difference in Drupal between what is in the code and what is in the database. And without getting into too much detail, just suffice it to say that if you download a module or if you download a new theme, you are actually changing the files or the code of your site. But if you just go in and make a change on an administration page, that's not actually changing the code of your site. That's just changing a setting that is saved within the Drupal database. So that's never going to show up here if you change a setting. It's only going to show up if you download a new module or download a new theme. So we're going to go ahead and just put initial commit here in our commit message. And what you're doing here is you're actually committing using a version control system known as Git. And this is actually going to just save all the changes or all the new modules you've downloaded to your code. And this will allow you then to pull those new modules up to your test site and your live site. So once you are able to write that commit message, it's going to go through a process where it actually saves that commit. Anytime you download a new module on dev, you can be a little more specific with your commit message, and you can mention what you actually changed or what module you added, and that's going to then show up in this commit log so you can keep track of what changed on your site over time. So it's a nice way to see what changed, and it does give you the ability then at any point in time you can roll back to code at a specific state. So once that commit is gone through, we're going to go through the different environments first. So if you go to the test environment, it says the testing environment hasn't been created yet. So we can clone the development environment to create the testing environment. So let's click that. And that's going to make a copy of our development environment and create our test environment.
So just to be clear, the site that we were building throughout the previous videos, again, was the dev site in Pantheon. It would appear to you to be the live site, but it was actually the dev site. So now what we're doing is we're basically taking that site and cloning it and making a duplicate and putting it in the testing site, or the test environment.
And so at this point in time, these sites will look identical, but just keep in mind that over time these sites could become different depending on what you do. And we'll go through what exactly shows up on your dev site and your test and live site once we get everything set up. But just know that when we initially look at them, they're going to be 100% identical. So this is just finishing up the process of setting up that test environment, and then once this has been completed, we will also set up our live environment. So our test environment has now been set up. We can click here to visit the testing site, and you'll notice that the URL is a little bit different there. Where before it was, I believe, dev-codekarate-store.pantheon.io, now it is test.
But again, the site's going to look identical to the dev site.
And if you go back, you can of course go to dev and click visit development site, and you'll notice that they do look identical. But the last step to get your live site set up is to clone the testing environment to create the live environment. So at this point, once this finishes, you'll have 3 identical sites, but this provides that workflow where you can test something on dev. Maybe you want to make sure a new product is going to look right, so you can build it on dev first, make sure it looks good, and then when you are ready, you can actually add it to your live site. Or if it's adding a new feature to your site, you will download the module on the dev site, use that little git commit tool that was over in the middle. You'll commit up that actual change. You'll pull it to your test site. You can do a quick test there, and then you'll be able to actually pull it up to your live site. So once this live site is created, we'll go through some of the other tools that are on the left sidebar, and we'll walk through how you can use them within Pantheon to actually configure and get your site up and running. Okay, here we go. So if you'll notice, between the sites, the sidebar is almost identical. I mean, there's only, I believe, one difference, and that's this deploys link, which just tells you the deploy log, which is when it was actually created, or when things have been deployed to that environment. So let's just go through the various sections here. The first is the code, and that's one we've already looked at. This will just show you on your test and live environment what has been changed within the code. There is a status, and this will tell you various status checks. So if you go to the dev environment and look at the status checks, you'll see there's a lot more information because the site has been around longer, and all the status checks have already run. And you can read through these, and this will give you helpful hints to help optimize your site. There are some things it's going to do, such as tell you if things are not up to date, and it will give you ideas on how to fix those. So you can go ahead and look through those. The workflow allows you to clone either your database or your files to your different environments. So if you ever need to copy your actual entire database to a different environment, you can use this. One thing to note is you're not going to want to copy your database up to your live site, and I don't know if it even gives you that option, but that's one thing you're not going to want to do. It does give you that option in the beginning, but that's something that you're going to be wary of, because any new users or any new orders that you created are saved in the database. So if your live site has orders that have been created for it, you're not going to want to clone your database to your live site. But let's just keep going through. Errors are going to show you if there are any errors. As you can see, we don't have any errors, so that's good. Domains and SSL, that's something we're going to be setting up here in just a second, but we're not going to go through that too much yet, but that's going to allow you to use a custom domain name and your SSL certificate. There are a way to schedule backups, and you can use the backups tab to schedule your different backups and to create a new backup at any point in time. And then there's a security settings for your development environment. By default, your development environment is public, but you can lock it, and then it will ask you to enter in a password to get to your development environment. And that's just so if you do not want other people to accidentally stumble upon your development environment, you can go ahead and turn that off. You can do the same for test. So in the next section, we're actually going to go through setting up your domain name and your SSL certificate. Just keep in mind there's a lot more to Pantheon than we went through, and there's a whole bunch of helpful tutorials within Pantheon itself. so you can look through those. Just keep in mind that the important step is you create or add new features and modules on dev. You're then going to commit them here, come into your test section. There'll be a button to pull in those changes, which we'll go through in a future section, and then you'll do the same for live. And then you will actually end up with your live website, and the changes will be pushed up one step at a time, and you'll be given the ability to test all changes before it actually goes live.